Okay, so you want to dive into Yom Kippur? Let's do it. We're talking more than just like a day off, right? You want the why, the significance, all that. And we've got some pretty interesting stuff to work with here.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
So we're looking at one, Rabbi Sacks, he's got a lot to say about Yom Kippur as this like engine for personal change, right? And then we've got these other texts, and it's like reading a movie script almost. All these super detailed rituals the high priest used to perform.
It's pretty wild, the contrast.
Right.
And the change, too, how Yom Kippur went from this massive public event, like in the ancient temple in Jerusalem,
Yeah.
to this, internal thing in synagogues.
Huge shift. So how do we get from that to this?
Well, the second temple being destroyed, big turning point. Before that, Yom Kippur, it was a show, almost. Public display of repentance. The high priest, that was the star of the show.
Like the go-between, right? Between people and God.
Exactly. But no temple. Whole different ballgame.
No more stage, no more performance. It had to become something else.
And it went inward. No temple, no high priest is this central figure. And Yom Kippur becomes about the individual's connection directly with the divine.
Like everyone's their own high priest now.
You got it. Democratize the whole thing. Seeking atonement, doesn't matter who you are, what you do.
And speaking of the high priest, the sources go deep into how they got ready for Yom Kippur. Intense is an understatement.
Oh, absolutely. Demanding, physically and spiritually. An entire week, they'd live in seclusion before Yom Kippur, just to avoid becoming impure.
A whole week, seriously. They were not messing around.
Nope. Practicing those rituals over and over, even staying awake the night before, had to be perfect. Anything could disqualify them.
Can you imagine that pressure? Biggest game of your life, but with eternal stakes.
And carrying everyone's sins, too. That was their burden, the weight of the community.
Which makes me think of what Rabbi Sacks says about guilt, shame, how Judaism approaches that whole thing differently.
Huge difference. He talks about this difference between shame, which is about being bad, and guilt, about doing bad. Judaism's all about the latter.
So not about saying someone is flawed, but that everyone messes up.
That's it. Opens the door for repentance, right, for growth, for being better. Judaism's all about that potential that we can change.
And that takes us to Yom Kippur being this like booster for personal change, not just feeling bad, but taking that and making different choices next time.
Exactly. You've got this structured space, Yom Kippur, to really look at yourself. Where'd you miss the mark? What are you going to do next time?
Okay, so we've got this intense high priest prep, this public to personal shift, and this focus on self-improvement. But let's get into the details. What did the high priest actually do during Yom Kippur? I'm really curious about the clothes.
Oh, yeah. Clothes are a big deal. Super symbolic in the Yom Kippur rituals.
Yeah.
We're not talking everyday high priest outfits, the golden garments.
Wait, golden garments. Okay, now I'm picturing like full-on fantasy epic.
Laughs.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were pretty fancy. But Yom Kippur, simple white linen.
What's with the wardrobe change?
It's about humility, equality.
Yeah.
Ditch the fancy stuff, put on plain white, and it's like the high priest saying, before God, we're all the same here.
Levels the playing field, no matter who you are on the outside.
That's the point. Yom Kippur, everyone's equal in God's eyes, looking for atonement.
And this was all happening within these crazy detailed rituals. We're going to get into more of those specifics, I promise. Okay, so we're back to this high priest in the white linen doing these rituals. It's kind of a lot to picture.
Powerful imagery, though, right?
Totally. And it gets at that thing in Judaism, how looks can be deceiving. It's what's inside that matters.
Absolutely.
Which makes me think of Rabbi Sacks' whole thing about the 5 pillars, the impact of Yom Kippur. We were talking about shame versus guilt earlier. What else did he say was key for personal change?
Owning it. Owning your actions.
Like not just feeling bad, but taking responsibility.
Exactly. It's not enough to just, feel guilty. You got to say, yeah, I messed up.
Yeah.
And you got to recognize how that affected other people, too.
Okay, so that I messed up moment. What comes next?
Apology, right. Forgiveness, huge part of Yom Kippur. Not just asking for it from the people you've wronged, but also giving it to those who've wronged you.
So it's about those relationships with other people, like how we affect them, not just this solo mission to be better.
Exactly. Remember we talked about that idea? Kol Yisrael Arivim Zabaza? All of Israel is responsible for one another. We're all connected. What I do affects you. What you do affects me.
Right. Okay, yeah. So that's why making things right is so important. But what about those times when you messed up, but you can't apologize? Maybe the person's gone, or it's just, I don't know, impossible for some reason.
That's a really good point. And that's where Yom Kippur gives us this chance to do what Rabbi Sacks calls spiritual accounting. Basically, you're looking at all your relationships, past, present, everything, thinking about those arguments that never got resolved, the times you should have said something but didn't.
So you can still find some closure, even if you can't talk to the person directly.
Right.
You're making amends, in a way.
In a way, yeah. You're acknowledging the hurt you caused, trying to make things right, even if it's just within yourself.
So you can move on with a clean slate.
That's the idea. It's powerful stuff.
Totally. Okay, so we've covered the evolution of Yom Kippur, how the high priest got ready, Rabbi Sachs on guilt, responsibility, forgiveness. But let's get back to the temple, those rituals. There was something about a goat, right?
That was, yes,
The scapegoat.
one of the most, well, it was very visual ritual, very striking.
So fill us in. What was with the goat?
Picture this, 2 goats. They look exactly the same, right? One is for God, the other for Azazel.
Azazel being.
It's complicated. A lot of people say it represents the wilderness, like a desolate place, you know.
Okay, so 2 goats, one for God, one for the wilderness. Then what?
Here's the thing. The high priest, they'd confess all the sins of the entire community over the goat for Azazel. It was symbolic, like they were putting all those sins onto the animal.
They were literally putting sins on a goat.
Well, yeah, kind of. And then that goat, they thin it out into the wilderness, gone, taking those sins with it.
Talk about a visual. It's like they were trying to forget those sins ever happened.
Exactly. Wiping the slate clean. A fresh start.
So where does this goat thing fit in with the whole personal side of Yom Kippur, the stuff we do today?
That is the question, isn't it? It gets right to the heart of what Yom Kippur still means today. And we'll get into that connection in just a minute.
Okay, so back to this whole scapegoat thing. Kind of a wild idea when you really think about it, but we don't do that anymore, right? So how does that connect to what Yom Kippur means now, all the personal stuff?
It's all about the symbolism. We don't have the goat, the wilderness, but the idea is still there, you know? At wiping the slate clean, starting fresh.
So if there's no goat, what are we, like, transferring the sins onto now? Ourselves?
In a way, yeah. Not literally, obviously,
Yeah.
but we're taking ownership. We messed up, we got to own it, and then, like we were saying, trying to do better.
Instead of a ritual, it's all internal now.
Exactly. That high priest in the simple clothes, approaching God, no pretense. That's what we're doing, too. Stripping away the BS, looking at our flaws, trying to connect to something bigger.
Even though the way we do it's changed, that core idea, that wanting to be forgiven, wanting to be better, it's still there.
It's powerful stuff. Yom Kippur, it forces you to look inward, you know, to really ask yourself